You actually see Butler take, I think it's pre-snap, he actually takes 2 steps forward to make himself that much closer. Had he not took that little movement, he wouldn't have been able to get there on time. So it was absolutely a result of what they had done in practice, and the players all said that. So I guess sometimes that's where Twitter and the social media universe just baffles me. It's like there's enough stupidity out in the world. Can we just not spread it out there for no reason?
Listen, George Carlin once said, think about how dumb the average person is. 50% of the people are dumber than them because they're just 50%. They're just average. So take that to sports. I had someone say the other day that Bill Belichick should be fired over a preseason game. I was like, are you kidding me?
I love preseason, but you know what I think it is? Honestly, Monty, I think the people that really love preseason, we enjoy all the shenanigans and the so-called quote-unquote boring football. I believe the people that don't like it are the ones that say these stupid things and are always making stuff up because they just want to annoy the people that actually enjoy watching the guys that are on the bubble and getting to know their team in depth. You don't have, that's the one thing. I'm for an 18-game schedule, but I'm not for taking away 4 preseason games, Monty, because that's that's where you get to learn your team, and that's where the guys that don't make the team without them, they get to develop. And even if they don't get on tape, they get to continue on their NFL dream because there's enough tape for other teams to evaluate with those 4 preseason games. I think it's kind of how do they say it? It's cutting off your nose to spite your face sort of thing. If you did that, it's what we all want, even as fans, even the ones that don't. We want more regular season games, but you really don't want to see a team that doesn't know who their on the bubble guy is or the practice squad guy that they really want because they didn't have enough time to evaluate it. Because that you want to talk about an NFL roster mess, that's going to create a whole different problem, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, the problem I have with the preseason is always week 4 when no one of value plays. No one plays. It's just like a scrimmage. So what I would do is I don't ever want to cut the prep time for these teams. So just have 3 preseason games. Make them a little bit more important so you play your guys. Guys get in shape. Again, Le'Veon Bell is not going to play in the preseason. He was saying today, I need to get hit, guys. They're not hitting me in practice. Like, I need to feel that. I haven't been hitting over a year. So, but, guys need to be physically and mentally ready for the pounding that's going to come. So I just don't like Game 4 because not one starter plays it in Week 4 of the preseason.
That's been a huge topic, and one of my ideas was on this, Monty, was that we all know preseason 4, it's not important other to the coachings and GMs. So why, again, it goes with what you were just saying, why pretend it's still a preseason game when it's really all it is a last live action talent evaluator for that bottom half of your roster? Basically, let's just call it what it is. Let's modify rosters. You don't have to dress all these guys. Keep all the guys you know are at home, and let's just have these a modified roster. And it let's still use it, but it doesn't need to have to be a whole production and make it a preseason game. But I still think that's important because that is the game where the on the bubble guy, if he has a bad game, he's cut and he might get it to the practice squad. But if he's has a good game that game, he's probably going to make the special teams unit on the 53. So I still think that game's important. But I think they need to – it's all about the packaging, right, Monty? They just need to change the packaging and the way they deliver it and what they call it and stop with this charade that, because we're going to hear all week, well, they didn't play this week because of the field conditions. It normally doesn't happen, but the starters in Green Bay, we might see Aaron Rodgers, and we're going to hear that all the way up until 5 minutes became game time, and then there's going to be the same thing, which is we all know it's a lie to begin with, but that's how they're going to sell us, and it's – time to end that.
Week 4 in preseason is tremendously important for the coaching staff, and like you said, for a player who doesn't want to go back to driving a FedEx truck or whatever. Because a lot of these guys, they're walk-ons. There's a story about this wide receiver and kickoff returner for the Cleveland Browns. It's a great story. He was basically living out of his car. He got a tryout. He had a touchdown run 2 weeks ago. He was living out of his car. He was showering at 24-Hour Fitness. He was plugging in his phone at local laundromats. So, this guy's fighting for his life. So Game 4 is very important for the coaches. But like you said, unless you're a nerd or a numbers guy like you and I try to be, like we are when it comes to football, the casual fan doesn't appreciate it. So they should call it like the young, a young skills game or something like that. I agree with you. So you have all these young players, do like background stories on a few of them. The quarterback, this guy, so that teams of the Jets or no diehard Jet fan is really going to watch the fourth preseason game. But if you make it like a young stars and you interview these guys and you let them basically take over the team for the last 4 or 5 games of preseason, that's the way to package it. I agree with you.
Well, and even expanding on that, now that we're sitting here thinking it, you got my wheels rolling. Why, if we're going to repackage it and change it completely and make it what it is, if we're leaving all these players home, well, then their excuse is going to be, well, you need so many bodies to even play a game. Well, then don't count these, like you just said. Okay, well, there's a bunch of these guys we didn't get a look at, or this he was on this team, but now he's cut, but we couldn't get him because that would have put us over our 90-man roster. You get a one-game, open. Those 45 guys that are starting, or those 40 guys that you have, you left them at home. They're not even at the game. Okay, they're not there. We didn't. So now let's give you 20 extra roster spots for one game only to bring in whoever you want. That's free and available and play. And they're not going to count against your 90-man roster. Like, to me, that would be an even better way to be able to, for these GMs and coaches, because then they would get not only a look at guys they already had on their roster through camp, but they would be able to possibly bring back guys or other guys that they didn't get because of their limitations on their roster and be able to evaluate them, even if it's not for their original 53. Injuries happen in this league. You need a list. Every team has a list. And the more guys you can evaluate in live action, the better it is for the player and the coaches and the organization, period. So I think we just came up with something. We need to package that, send it over to the NFL offices.
Listen, I'm a big believer in that. Again, week 4, you got to make it viable for the fans, and you got to make it a little bit more personal. Treat these week 4 players like they're the stars of the team in local radio, local TV. Interview these guys, and give them a shot. Listen, Hard Knocks is very popular. Why? Because you get the behind-the-scenes look of any NFL team that's on there. Right now, it's the Raiders, obviously John Gruden, and people love that stuff. So, the NBA does a great job of this, of marketing their players. They probably do it better than anyone. I think Major League Baseball does a lousy job. I mean, I know who Mike Trout is because I follow sports, but he walks in a mall, no one's going to know who he is, right? Because they don't market their players. This could be a way to market these guys who no one knows about, and do like a little week of Hard Knocks for week 4 of the NFL preseason for every team.
Man, we need to be on an NFL pay scale somewhere in a think tank, man. I think we just solved all their issues about preseason right there. That was pretty good. All right, man, we got one more for you before we get going here, so it's going to be a doozy. So let's have your top 3 2018 playoff teams on the outs for the playoffs in 2019.
Okay, this is going to be hard for me because I don't really like the team, but I love the coach, John Harbaugh. But I think Lamar Jackson, think about this. Lamar Jackson became the starter, and they went 6-1, okay, the Ravens, with really no passing attack. They basically ran the old wishbone in college with 3 running backs and Lamar Jackson. But I think Lamar Jackson's going to improve, but they lost so many defensive players. Right? We talk about the Jets getting a linebacker. They lost Terrell Suggs. They lost their safety. So as good as a coach John Harbaugh is, I don't think they're going to be – I think teams on the rise, I think the Steelers are going to be better than they were last year. Mike Tomlin, the head coach of the Steelers, has never had a losing season on the sideline. I mean, think about that. Think about all the great coaches in the history of the NFL. Bill Belichick has had losing seasons. Bill Walsh has had losing seasons. Andy Reid has had losing seasons. Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season. I think Pittsburgh is going to come out and they're going to play an attitude. So I think the Steelers and the Browns will be better than the Ravens. So that's my first team. Let's see. We have also. I have the Houston Texans taking a step back. Now, most people think that the Colts won the division. The Houston Texans started the season 0-3. They're the only team in the history of the NFL to start 0-3 and then win 9 straight games. I love Deshaun Watson, but they still have not improved their offensive line. So I think the Titans and the Colts are going to be better. Now, this could be a bad pick because we're finding out now that Andrew Luck hasn't practiced since March. So they don't know how long Andrew Luck's going to be in. And for everyone listening, just Google the Colts' first 6 games of the season. They are brutal. They could go 2-4 with Andrew Luck. So I think, but I'm going to go with the Titans. And then finally, if I'm going to take one more team that gets knocked out, I'm going to go with the Seahawks. I think the 49ers and the Rams should step up. Everyone relax about Jimmy Garoppolo. He's coming off a knee injury. He played Denver with Nick Fangio, who's one of the best defensive coordinators. The first time the guy's played in the year. Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be fine. So I think the Packers and the Eagles are the class of the NFC, and the Chiefs and the Patriots are the class of the NFC. And that's pretty much my final 4. If I had to pick it right now, I'm going to take the Packers to beat the Eagles. The Eagles have a great offensive line, but I think the Packers are going to go to the Super Bowl, and I think it's going to be the Patriots against the Packers.
Whoa, we finally get a Tom Brady versus Aaron Super Bowl?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
That would be, like, tremendous. Not just because I'm, Packers guy and I want to see him in the Super Bowl, but, like, that would be the one because we were talking with our guest on Tuesday, and that was one of the conversations about we talk about all the great quarterbacks. And we always hear this every show, national show on TV and such, is they're always pumping. Every year we got 5 new Hall of Fame quarterbacks that get drafted in the first round, it seems like, And it seems like by the end of the year, we're talking about the same 4 or 5 guys, And when you think about that, like, we haven't got those guys matched up in the playoffs or even in the – like, the NFL has not done a good enough job of taking – Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers should have played at least every other year, if not every year. They're in different conferences. Like, we should – as fans, we should get to see that. You know what I mean? Like, they have not done like the NBA does and schedules the superstars enough to play each other so that we can have better discussions of who's really better. We've seen Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers play twice, and they were like 4 years apart. It's like it's just not enough.
Well, no, that's a great point, but it was very interesting last year because if you look at the NFL Final Four, you had Drew Brees against Jared Goff, a veteran Super Bowl winner against a young and upcoming quarterback. And in the AFC, you had Tom Brady in Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes, a young and up-and quarterback against a Super Bowl winner veteran. So it was very interesting last year because most people thought it was going to be Drew Brees going, to your point, against Tom Brady, but it wasn't. But listen, I think it's, like I said, I think it's going to be a young quarterback again, Carson Wentz in Philadelphia against Aaron Rodgers. We're going to have Tom Brady again to his 16th AFC Championship, and they're going to go against, I think he's going to go against Patrick Mahomes.
Woo! I tell you what, that's a lot, and that's a bold prediction right there and early, man. But I like it. I like it a lot, Monty.
I think the Packers and I think the Eagles with their offensive line, their defense. I love their coach. And look, Carson Wentz before he got hurt, he would have been the MVP 2 years ago. He was having that good of a year.
Yes, he was, and in fact, I was one of the people that argued that he should have still won it. Because didn't Tom win his off of the year that he was suspended for 2 games or whatever, and he won?
Well, yeah, yes, he did. And also, he had, I mean, in 3 less games, he had more touchdown passes than Tom Brady.
Yeah, so I didn't like that argument. I thought to me, he deserved it. He had played. It wasn't like, he came in when everybody else was hurt. And I just didn't understand the logic there. He had done it all season long. It was only 3 games. Really, it was only 2 because he had done such a good job. The last game didn't even matter. So essentially, he only missed 2 games, and people completely, knocked him off the pedestal of being the MVP. It's one of my pet peeves, Monty. And I'm not going to get into it, but I will mention it. When it comes to the GOAT conversation and the meaning of MVP, the acronym, both ways, in 2019, excuse my language, they have both been bastardized to a point of unrecognition anymore. Like
it's almost a media award. The media picks